What up guys, today I will be ranking every melee-spec DPS in the game according to how fun it is for me to play with. Keep in mind that fun is relative and that what is fun to me might not be as entertaining to you. I believe we can all agree that there are factors that almost always directly represent a fun gameplay experience. Those being high mobility, so that you have a very high uptime on your target and thus don't get bored slugging around, fast reliable crowd control, being able to sustain yourself and thus not rely heavily on your teammates' capabilities, and lastly, having abilities with engaging visual effects. Let's start with my current main spec, Havoc Demon Hunter. This is currently and by far the most enjoyable spec to play in Dragonflight. Havoc checks every single one of the parameters I talked about and excels at every single one of them. Players who don't understand the class tend to paint it as a very straightforward face roll spec, and that couldn't be further away from the truth. Demon Hunter is currently one of the highest skill ceiling classes in WoW PvP, much thanks to how complex and game-changing the PvP talent glimpse is. If you want a fun, mobile, hack and slash, somewhat self-sustainable class, with very good reliable instant crowd control capabilities, then look no further, embrace the chaos as Demon Hunter is where you belong. Next up, Death Knight. I have played this class for a very long time. It used to be fun back in the day, but since then, classes like Windwalker Monk and Demon Hunter came out. Every other class got reworked, including Death Knight, but its playstyle is still pretty much the same. Currently, Unholy is the most fun out of the two specs, a very high skill ceiling spec indeed, easy to do well with, but your damage is really not your own. All your damage will come from your dots, your pet, and from the occasional one-button press Abomination Limb. And that is pretty much it. Everything else is a filler that does not feel rewarding at all, because of how small the impact of everything else turns out to be. With that said, Unholy Death Knight has very good cross-crowd control potential, being able to disrupt a healer like few other classes can. Then we have Frost, a pretty straightforward spec, simple and effective, pretty much a Fury Warrior with a much slower paced playstyle, different mobility, and some pretty engaging spell effects. It is fun to be able to spam Chains of Ice and disrupt the entire enemy team's mobility, but that will only get you so far. You are still a simple spec, and currently pretty boring, although very capable and quite effective. Now to Feral Druid. Feral is pretty fun, it is a very versatile spec, you can adapt to any situation and excel at it. If your team needs to get a crucial defensive out of a target, Feral can easily pressure the guy out and get it. Also, if your team needs to pressure the healer, Feral can easily do tremendous amounts of damage on all three targets at once, regardless of how far away they are from each other. It is a very powerful spec in the right hands, very fun to play, incredibly effective, pretty much a free gladiator spec if you enjoy it. Of course, form shifting is not for everyone, even though nowadays you rarely need to get out of cat form, other than to more efficiently heal up or cyclone/root. Feral Druid is definitely the spec for you if you enjoy the whole Druid archetype. Next up, Warrior. Warriors are now more than ever a ruthless berserker class. Their damage is insanely high and so is their mobility. Fury is the highest self-healing spec in the game when played properly, which is really not hard to do. Since Warrior currently has a pretty average skill ceiling, there is not much to it other than tunneling the best kill target, occasionally Stormbolt into Heroic Leap Fear the healer, and if you are feeling like a team player, intercept your currently focused teammate. If you are always beyond hyped when you play WoW Arena, definitely choose Fury Warrior as it is, by far, the highest click per minute class in the game. It is so spammy that if you're not used to it, get ready to feel the tiredness on your wrists after a few games. Arms on the other hand is much slower, a very simple but impactful spec. They kept buffing arms damage and currently Mortal Strike is hitting almost as high as a Frost Mage Glacial Spike. So we will have to wait and see what they do about that, but for now, if you want to one-shot people pretty easily without having to think much about it, definitely give Harm's Warrior a go. Next up, Rogue. The class that everyone who plays it loves and everyone who doesn't hates. Rogue is very fun to play, but it has a pretty unique playstyle that takes some getting used to. Even though it is an assassin archetype class, it is one of the most resilient DPS in the arena, thanks to how well a good rogue is able to rotate his defensive cooldowns with his massive crowd control capabilities. Also, rogues have the ability to reset any fight, anytime, anywhere, about as much as they please. Until the one combo they actually know how to do finally works and 100-0 someone. Yep, from this statement you can tell that I really dislike these sneaky guys. But I have played them, every single spec actually, and yes, I have to say that they are really fun and honestly, the best class to carry any game given how high the skill cap is, despite it being really easy to do well with in lower ranks. Subtlety is the best playmaker spec, Shadow Dance opens many potential play scenarios, it has very high burst when they pop Shadow Blades, however, don't expect to top the DPS charts in the arena. For sub, that does not matter at all, as your win condition is not accomplished by sheer pressure, but by a very well executed and coordinated one-shot. Assassination is the easiest spec to play, pretty much the easy mode Subtlety, very effective, dot-based similarly to how a Feral Druid works, but still a pure assassin playstyle just like you would expect from a rogue. Assassination offers much higher damage output but less crowd control potential. Outlaw is the brawler iteration of rogue. It used to be pretty unique, but they have butchered the spec since. And now, even though it is still very strong, it's just boring to play. If you like the complexity, fast-paced, outplay potential of a rogue, and don't mind playing like a coward, then definitely give any of these specs a try. Now to Windwalker Monk. This used to be the most fun spec in the game, but Dragonflight didn't really improve it. And since almost every other class got new toys, Windwalker staying pretty much the same just made it fall a bit behind fun-wise. To me, it still is the second best, with extremely high mobility, very strong burst windows, along with a really high sustained damage output. Touch of Karma, however, needs to be much more impactful, since currently all it does is slightly discourage someone from attacking you, but often if the CC lands on your healer, Karma will just be ignored and you will be forced to either retreat, rendering your Karma usage useless, or you will simply die right there and then if no more defensives are available. Because of this, Karma is currently best used offensively, which I'm not really a fan of. Next up, Retribution Paladin. This is the class I mained for the longest time along with Death Knight. I love Retribution Paladin, but what Blizz did to it in Dragonflight was nothing short of sheer butchering. I am not saying that Ret is not strong, because yes, it does have a very high damage output, but today I am talking about fun, and Ret has been completely destroyed in that regard. The class design was so butchered that now most of your damage comes from Judgment and from the Lawbringer passive PvP talent, which is a Judgment modifier as well. So instead of working towards building holy power to then spend on rewarding Templar's verdicts, you are doing all your damage with fillers, and your spenders are just what you press when you somehow manage to get into melee range. Often only possible thanks to your teammates' help. Retribution has no mobility whatsoever, it never did, and their way to fix that was make you do all your damage with a filler ranged ability. So now we are some sort of hybrid range class that heavily relies on your teammates to actually work. Also, a Paladin archetype class that is, and has been for many years, the easiest kill target in the game for any comp that has either a warrior or a priest, which are currently both S tier classes and very common, just makes no sense whatsoever. Retribution is very strong in pre-made arena, their team utility and burst potential are still very powerful factors, but when it comes to fun, Blizz did a terrible job with Paladins this expansion. Next up, Shaman. Enhancement Shaman best fun-wise feature are its amazing spell effects. They really do make the game more fun and engaging. Also, its bursty playstyle can be very cool when you catch someone by surprise outside of their defensive windows. Shaman, however, is a pretty easy target, one of the best kill targets since ever, thanks to how squishy they are, and that can understandably discourage many players. However, a good enhancement shaman will be able to stand his ground for quite a while, with pretty good fast healing output during battle. If you are a fan of the elements, love the bursty supporting playstyle, and don't mind getting focused almost every game, then definitely give enhancement a try. And finally, it's time for the Hunter. Survival Hunter is incredibly strong, but its playstyle is also quite unique, and as such, we don't see that many of them. Make no mistake, however, this spec can dominate an arena with very high damage potential, fast cross-crowd control through well-placed freezing traps, and an amazing ability to dead zone targets. If you are not familiar with the dead zone term, it is what we call the circular area around yourself, where you are within range of effectively hitting your target, where they however cannot hit you back. That is something Survival does really well, thanks to its pretty good mobility and kiting tools. If you enjoy the Hunter archetype, but prefer to play melee rather than ranged, well, then without a doubt, Survival is for you. I hope this helped you decide what to play next. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you haven't yet, and as always, I will see you in the arena.